Here they come. All right, we're waiting for Councillor Fitzgerald. Is he coming? There he is. All right, I'll call this meeting to order and welcome everyone to the hearing. And I confirm we have quorum. I would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe under the terms of the Robertson-Huron Treaty number 61 of 1850 and the Williams Treaties of 1923. We commit to acknowledge, learn, educate, create opportunity, honor sacred spaces, and take actions toward real truth and reconciliation in support of our commitment to walking the path together in respect, peace, and harmony for future generations. And with that, I have a motion moved by Brandon Stapleton, seconded by Helena Renwick. Be it resolved that the Committee of Adjustment agenda dated May 11, 2022 be hereby adopted as printed and circulated. All in favor? Wow, got it. Carried. All right, are there disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, I have a motion. Moved by Kenneth Donald, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that Committee of Adjustment meeting minutes dated April 13, 2022, and the recommendations contained therein be hereby adopted as printed and circulated. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay. I'd like to welcome everyone to the public meetings to consider applications for minor variances to the zoning bylaw. The input received by agencies, public, and staff is important in order for the committee to make sound planning decisions. The procedure to be followed in these meetings will be as follows. A brief explanation of the application and any correspondence received to date will be given by staff. The applicant or the representative will be asked to provide any additional comments without repeating the information already outlined by staff. Any members of the public present will then be permitted to ask questions or provide comments respecting the applications. Any persons making representation are requested to first state their name and mailing address. Please note that presentations are limited to 10 minutes. Once the hearing is concluded, the input received will be considered by the committee prior to making a decision on the applications. If you wish to be notified of a decision of the committee, you must file a written request for notification. And with that, we're off and running. Madeline is going to speak to 43 Lake Drive.
Good morning, everyone. I'll just take a second to share my screen.
Mm-hmm.
Can everyone confirm that they can see that?
I can.
Perfect. Okay, so through you, Mr. Chair, the subject property is located at 43 Lake Drive. The lot is designated urban shoreline residential in Huntsville's official plan and zoned residential 1 under Huntsville zoning bylaw. The application is to permit the construction of a 93-meter squared 2-story garage addition to the existing dwelling. A minor variance is required for the garage to reduce the rear yard setback from 10 meters to 7 meters. The minor variance will be conditional on the owner removing the attached carport and shed within the rear yard, the owner retaining a vegetative buffer along the rear and northerly interior side yards for visual screening purposes, and the owner revegetating the shoreline buffer, all to the satisfaction of the town and will be implemented through site plan control. Based on the configuration of the property, the garage addition is proposed in the most suitable location as it is in an already cleared area which will mitigate vegetation removal and is on level ground which does not interfere with any sloping on the property. The size and scale of the proposed addition will reflect that of the surrounding area and the existing dwelling. As such, the variance requested will not likely result in any significant impacts to abutting landowners. Additionally, to maintain visual screening, a condition is recommended to require the vegetative buffer along the rear and northerly interior side yard adjacent to the proposed addition to remain. Looking at the official plan, the urban shoreline residential designation anticipates both low and medium density residential uses, inclusive of single detached dwellings, In this instance, the proposed two-story garage has been designed to meet the character of the area. Natural constraint mapping identifies type 2 fish habitat and sloping of various degrees. As the proposed garage addition is sited more than 40 meters away from the shoreline, it would avoid potential negative impacts to fish habitat. The garage is also outside of any steep sloped area. The policies of Section B of the official plan require the protection and restoration of natural shorelines and shoreline vegetation, and where soil and terrain conditions permit, a minimum 75% of the continuous lake, river, or stream shoreline frontage of a lot will be maintained in a natural state to a depth of 15 meters from the shoreline. The policy states that where lots are already developed and further development or redevelopment is proposed, or where the lot is located within the Huntsville urban settlement area, these targets should be achieved to the greatest extent possible. A condition has been added for the owner to revegetate the shoreline buffer to meet this policy. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and to the Fairy Lake Association. The application would appear to conform to the intent of the official plan and be consistent with the provincial policy statement. Additionally, the application appears to satisfy the 4 tests for a minor variance as set out in the Planning Act, and therefore staff are recommending approval. Thank you for listening, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. I'll call on the applicant or representative to make any comments about this.
The applicant or their representative are reminded to use the raise hand button or press *9 to indicate that they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I don't see any hands raised. I do see the applicant in there. But
that's fine.
No hands
If
raised.
they don't need to speak, if they don't want to, that's fine. I will go to the members of the public watching if they'd like to make any comments about this.
Members of the public are reminded to use the raise hand button or press *9 to indicate that they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I see no hands raised.
All right, then I'll go to committee members. Any comments or questions? Mr. Donald.
Thank you, Chair Stone. Through you to Madeline. Is the second story of the garage intended to have accommodation?
Thank you. Through you, Chair Stone. I'm unaware of the second story of the garage having any habitable space. I believe it is just for garage and storage area.
All right. Any other comments or questions? All right, then I'll read the motion. Moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Kenneth Donald. Be it resolved that minor variance application A14-2022 HTE be approved. The purpose and effect of which is to provide relief from subsections 5.2.4 of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2008-66P in order to reduce the rear yard setback from 10 meters to 7 meters for the construction of a 93 square meter two-story garage addition. Conditional on the owner removing the attached carport and the shed within the rear yard, the owner retaining a vegetative buffer along the rear and northerly interior side yard for visual screening purposes, and the owner revegetating the shoreline buffer, all to be implemented through site plan control to the satisfaction of the town. Any further comments or questions? All in favor? And that's carried. Thanks, Madeline. I think we're moving on to the next one, 236 West Point Sands Road.
Yes, thank you. I'll just set up my screen. Can we all see that?
We can.
Perfect. Through you, Mr. Chair, the subject property is located at 236 West Point Sands. The lot is designated waterfront in Huntsville's official plan and zoned Shoreline Residential 1 under Huntsville zoning bylaw. An application has been submitted for the construction of various additions to the existing dwelling. including a 34-meter square addition and attached deck on the west side of the property, and a 25-meter square dwelling addition and new covered entrance at the rear of the property. A minor variance is required for the additions to increase the primary lot coverage from 10% to 13% and to reduce the westerly side yard setback from 6 meters to 3 meters. The minor variance will be conditional on accessory lot coverage being reduced to 4.2%, the owner relocating the existing septic system or installing a new system, if necessary, to ensure compliance with the Ontario Building Code regulations, and the owner retaining a vegetative buffer along the westerly interior side yard for visual screening purposes to be implemented through site plan control to the satisfaction of the town of Huntsville. The property is currently developed with a single detached dwelling with attached garage, private cabin, and dock. The property slopes down from West Point Sands Road to Mary Lake. The lot is well vegetated with a mix of mature trees, shrubs, and ground cover. The shoreline buffer is developed with stone steps leading down to the dock and is planted with a variety of species among boulders. The surrounding uses are generally low-density shoreline residential in nature. Based on the configuration of the property, the size and scale of the proposed additions to the dwelling will reflect that of the surrounding area. The proposed additions are compliant with the front and rear yard setbacks, and both the westerly and rear additions would remain below the height of the existing dwelling. To prevent overdevelopment on the property, accessory lot coverage is recommended to be reduced to 4.2%, capping total lot coverage for the property at 17.2%. Looking at the official plan, the waterfront designation anticipates linear low-density shoreline residential development that represents the character and natural setting of the waterfront area. In this instance, the proposed additions are located in the most suitable areas that are significantly set back from the shoreline, where vegetation is already cleared and where the ground is level. The proposed development also reflects the placement of surrounding development, the character of the existing dwelling, and the residential waterfront character of the area. To mitigate potential visual impacts, a condition is recommended to retain a vegetative buffer along the westerly interior side yard. Natural constraint mapping identifies sloping of 20 to 40% degrees on the property in the areas closest to Mary Lake. It also identifies type 2 fish habitat. As the proposed additions are located further back than the required 20-meter setback from the shoreline and outside of identified slope areas, impacts on these constraints are mitigated. The property is also within the Mary Lake ridgeline area. Therefore, impacts to the natural view from the water to the ridgeline are to be addressed. There is existing substantial vegetation along the entire slope towards the water, hence the proposed development will be appropriately screened when viewed from the water. Further, there will be no impact on the Mary Lake ridgeline as the development will occur in previously cleared areas and surrounding vegetation will be retained. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and to the Mary Lake Association. The building department provided comments for the septic tank and bed location. A condition has been added to address this and ensure that the location of the new system meets the minimum requirements of the Ontario Building Code. The application would appear to conform to the intent of the official plan and be consistent with the provincial policy statement. Additionally, the application appears to satisfy the 4 tests for a minor variance as set out in the Planning Act, and therefore staff are recommending approval. Thank you, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. I'll call on the applicant or representative to make any comments.
The applicant or their representative are reminded to use the raise hand button or press *9 to indicate that they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I do see one hand raised. I will now bring them into the meeting. Please note that during the transition, your video panel will be momentarily interrupted. Once you have been added to the meeting, your video will appear in the committee member panel. Please have your microphone and video, if possible, turned on before you begin speaking and confirm your name and mailing address.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to say Madam Chair. You're not a madam. I know that.
Not today.
Appreciate that. Thanks very much. I appreciate Madeline's summary of the proposal. I appreciate most especially her determination that the proposal is minor and that it's consistent with the character of the neighborhood. I appreciate her assessment that it meets the 4 tests of the under the Planning Act. I have in my application letter some further description of why I believe the 4 tests are satisfied. If the committee has any questions about any one of those tests, I can elaborate. But I would just want to summarize that the purpose of the application is to try to make the house in the deck area. There's 2 aspects of it. One is to make the house improve its functionality in terms of having an entrance at the front of the house that's, or on the, from the driveway that's winterized. So they're proposing to enclose part of the open area that's there now and then add another extended covered area just so that they could use the cottage more seasonal year round without having the impact of snow drifting through the front door. The other aspect of it is really important is when you looked at maybe if I could ask Madeline to bring up the drawing that has my beautiful colored markings on it, the ones with the where you have the recommendation as well, that would be great.
Sure, Chair Stone, would that be okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. So the other aspect of the project which really triggered it to the largest extent is the configuration of the deck on the property right now. If we look at, we see the cross hatching for the area that's the dwelling and then the attached garage on the left-hand side of that. And then on the lake side of it, towards the top of it, there's a porch, which is really just a screened-in porch. It's not winterized or anything like that. And then an L-shaped deck, I should say, open deck. And you'll see a set of stairs there. So really the deck, because of its tight arrangement and going around that corner, really functions as almost 2 decks. And they have, the Powers have grandchildren, and there's issues with how do you configure seating arrangements or supervise people on a deck that's that configuration, and it's really seriously constrained by the narrow gap between the staircase and the building corner. So what they want to do is they want to add the area in yellow, enlarge the deck, and then relocate the stairs, importantly. So they're on the northwest corner in an area that allows people to bring children up the staircase and not have a tight 90-degree turn at the top, and whether you're young or old, it's really awkward. And then to be able to allow seating arrangements on the deck that allows people to be able to see all vantage points. Basically, if you sit in the area where the staircase is now, you would have that opportunity. So it really is one of improving the functionality and safety of the area on the deck, and by bringing it in, expanding it to the limit of the existing garage, we're not further compounding any encroachment or any side yard problems. And the idea is that the existing porch would just be expanded a little bit with additional screening in the area that's shown as red. So there is sound reasoning for the variances. It's not really one of seeking something that's not out of the ordinary or something that most property owners would not want to achieve if they were in the same circumstance. So again, I appreciate very much Madeline's comments and recommendation, and we sincerely hope that the committee will approve it today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Simpson, if you can stay with us for any questions later, but I'm going to go to the public right now. Any members of the public that wish to speak to this application?
Members of the public are reminded to use the raise hand button or press *9 to indicate that they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I see no hands raised.
Thanks very much. Committee members, any comments or questions? Ms. Renwick.
Through you, Chair Stone, to Madeline. So you're capping the lot coverage to 17.2%. And so that includes both the primary and the accessory lot coverage. Just for my own information, I forgot what is the maximum amount of lot coverage you can have for the primary lot coverage? Is it 15%?
For sure. So through you, Mr. Chair, the maximum lot coverage for primary is 10%.
10%. Okay.
However, there's an additional 5% for accessory. We don't combine the two. They are looked at as separate.
Okay.
However, the current accessory structures on the lot are at 4.2% accessory lot coverage. So to prevent overdevelopment, we just reduced it to cap it at that.
Okay. Thank you. That makes sense, I think.
right.
Thank you.
I have a question for Mr. Simpson. Do we know if there is going to be a new septic installed?
The owners are, again, thank you, Mr. Chair. The owners think that a septic system, the existing septic system may not be properly sited relative to the addition. So they budgeted in their capital program for this, the relocation of the system, by basically installation of a new septic system. And so, but we're not quite certain of that. So the way the recommendation was crafted was that the system would be, improved or relocated, where necessary, as necessary, to satisfy the code requirements. But my clients are fully expecting that they'll have to do something along that line.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. All right. Any other questions by committee? All right. Moved by Helena Renwick, seconded by Brandon Stapleton. Be it resolved that minor variance application A15-2022 HDE be approved. The purpose and effect of which is to provide relief from subsections 5.3.4, 5, and 7 of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2008-66P in order to increase the primary lot coverage from 10% to 13%, reduce the westerly side yard setback from 6 meters to 3 meters for an addition and attached deck to the existing dwelling, conditional on accessory lot coverage being reduced to 4.2%, the owner relocating the existing septic system or installing a new system if necessary to ensure compliance with the Ontario Building Code regulations, and the owner retaining a vegetative buffer along the westerly interior side yard for visual screening purposes to be implemented through site plan control to the satisfaction of the town of Huntsville. Comments or questions? All in favor? And that's carried. All right. Madeline, you're still with us for Monaghan Drive.
My apologies. I didn't realize I was still on mute.
Perfect. I can hear you and I see the screen.
Okay, perfect. So through you, Mr. Chair, the subject property is located at 362 Monaghan Drive. The lot is designated residential within Huntsville's urban settlement area in Huntsville's official plan and zoned rural 2 and natural resource in Huntsville's zoning bylaw. An application has been submitted to permit the construction of a swimming pool. A minor variance is required to permit a swimming pool to be erected in the front yard on the lot. The pool, including appropriate fenced area, is proposed to be approximately 293 meters squared. The minor variance will be conditional on a maintenance plan for the proposed pool being prepared to the satisfaction of the town to demonstrate that pool maintenance and drainage will not negatively impact Gypsy Bill Creek, and all conditions required to be implemented through previous file A41-2021 HTE being fulfilled, both to be implemented through site plan control to the satisfaction of the town of Huntsville. As committee may recall, the lands were subject of a recent minor variance application, file A41-2021 HTE, where a minor variance was granted for a 2-story detached addition, was granted for a 2-story dwelling addition with an attached garage, conditional on revegetation of areas along Gypsy Bill Creek to be implemented through site plan control. The proposed pool enclosure is set back 33.5 meters from both Gypsyville Creek and the proposed revegetation area. The zoning bylaw determines that the front lot line of a through lot is to be the lot line abutting the public street or public road which provides the principal means of access. Although access to the lot is from Monaghan Drive, it is a private road, so the front lot line is considered as the abutting Fairview Drive. Looking at the official plan, the subject lands are included in the residential designation in the town's urban area. The location of the proposed swimming pool appears to enhance the usability of the lands for the owner without resulting in any adverse impacts on surrounding lands. Natural constraint mapping identifies deer wintering habitat stratum 2 and a cold water stream with type 1 fish habitat. The previously approved minor variance application addressed these natural constraints, and a watercourse and deer wintering habitat assessment was completed by Riverstone Environmental Solutions, Inc. to assess the potential impacts. The current swimming pool proposal is outside of the 30-meter setback from the cold water stream, which will mitigate any potential risks and did not require an update to the previous assessment. To further maintain the health of the creek, a condition has been added to require a maintenance plan for the proposed pool to demonstrate that pool maintenance and drainage will not negatively impact Gypsyville Creek. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, and 2 letters of support were received from neighboring property owners and circulated to committee before the meeting. The application would appear to conform to the intent of the official plan and be consistent with the provincial policy statement. Additionally, the application appears to satisfy the 4 tests for a minor variance as set out in the Planning Act, and therefore staff are recommending approval. Thank you for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. I'll call on the applicant or representative to make any comments.
The applicant or their representative are reminded to use the raise hand button or press *9 to indicate that they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I do see 1 hand raised. I will now bring them into the meeting. A reminder to please have your microphone and video, if possible, turned on before you begin speaking, and to confirm your name and mailing address.
I can see your screen, but your video's not on. And you're muted.
Okay. I apologize, everybody. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay. It says my video's on. I have no idea why it isn't, but
All right, we can hear you, so you can go ahead
Okay.
if you'd like.
So yes. So thank you for hearing my application for a minor variance. We actually found out that our property was zoned the opposite of what we had thought, as our landscaper had contacted the town of Huntsville to make sure that we were going to be allowed to build the pool within the high water line of Gypsyville Creek. I appreciate all of Madeline's effort. She actually came out to the property and we took a look at the way the property was zoned, and instead of trying to rezone the property, it didn't make sense to us because of where my property actually touches Ferry View. There is a guardrail and we'd have to cross the creek as well. So it kind of took out the ability to just rezone the property, not to mention it would conflict with the minor variance that we had applied for last year. If you look at the map, you'll see it's fairly obvious that the property is used much differently than it's zoned. 95% of my property is located in my quote unquote front yard, with only my driveway in the backyard. We are building the pool on an existing hill, which we don't generally use for anything. As well, we will be removing an aged septic system that's buried in there, which is where the pool will be going. working with the pool company, we are ensuring that we are not using any kind of backwash system. If you're familiar with that, that results in taking water out of the system and dumping it, into the landscape to clean out any filtrates that are in there. We are actually going to go with a mechanical filter system, which will make sure that we don't expose any of that water to the NR zone or the creek. I don't really have much else to say. I think it's pretty obvious the conundrum that we're in with the zoning. But if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
No, you've cleaned up a couple actually, and I love that the old septic system's being removed and the filtration system is being put in the pool. So that sounds great to me. And obviously, when I first read this, putting a swimming pool in the front yard, I scratched my head and then I looked at the property and go, oh, okay. So anyways, that's just my comments. Thank you, Mr. Berger. I'm going to go to the members of the public, see if there's any questions or comments there.
Members of the public are reminded to use the raise hand button or press *9 to indicate that they would like to address committee. At Chair Stone, I see no hands raised.
Thanks very much. Committee members, any comments or questions? I've got two. Ms. Renwick.
Through you, Chair Stone, thank you. Just a comment, and I guess more of a comment. This is the first pool that has come across our committee of adjustment, which I find quite interesting. I just want to confirm this is an in-ground pool, is it not? Or is it built because it's on a slope?
Madeline?
Yeah, through you, Madeline?
Sure. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I can let Scott confirm this, but I do
Sure.
believe it will be an in-ground pool.
It will be an in-ground pool.
Okay.
We will be leveling out the land. We're actually going to be digging down to level it out. So down close to the house, up on the other side of the hill, and it will be in ground.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Donald?
Thank you, Chair Stone. Through you to Madeline. Has any of the work been conducted from the previous approval, or is this going to be work that will be undertaken simultaneously with the previous minor variation?
Yes, thank you for the question. Through you, Chair Stone. None of the work from the previous minor variance has been started. They're to be done together. So they will be submitted as one site plan.
Great, thanks very much. All right, Mr. Berger, if you could take your video down for us, please. And there's no other questions by committee? All right, moved by Brandon Stapleton, seconded by Kenneth Donald. Be it resolved that minor variance application A17-2022 HTE be approved, the purpose and effect of which is to provide relief from subsections 3.1.19.1 of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2008-66P in order to permit a swimming pool to be erected in the front yard of the lot. Conditional on a maintenance plan for the proposed pool being prepared to the satisfaction of the town to demonstrate that the pool maintenance and drainage will not negatively affect Gypsy Bill Creek, and all conditions required to be implemented through A41-2021 HTE being fulfilled, both to be implemented through site plan control to the satisfaction of the town of Huntsville. Comments or questions? All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Madeline. Kelsey is going to speak to Otter Lake Cottage Road.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just prepare my screen. I believe everybody's able to see that.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Through you, the subject property is located at 100 Otter Lake Cottage Road. The lot is designated waterfront and is zoned Shoreline Residential 1 and Rural 2. The application has been submitted to permit the construction of a new single detached dwelling with an attached deck, stairs, and sunroom. A minor variance is required to decrease the front yard setback from 19.2 meters to 14.37 meters for the single detached dwelling, from 20 meters to 15 meters for the sunroom, and from 17.5 meters to 15 meters for the attached deck. A minor variance was approved on August 11th to reduce the front yard setback for the redevelopment of this single detached dwelling. However, following the demolition of the former non-compliant dwelling, the applicant and their contractor uncovered issues with the proposed siting of the dwelling. It was determined that the building if it was to be built within the setback approved, there would have to be significant rock removal. Therefore, to prevent additional clearing and earthworks, the applicant has reevaluated their proposal and is requesting an amendment in order to development in an appropriate area within the existing topography. Staff requested an addendum to the fisheries assessment provided by Mikulski-Nielsen to address the further reduced front yard setbacks. The addendum provided that the project still has a low likelihood of impacting the fish habitat because development continues to be located outside of the shoreline buffer area. Also, there is a net benefit provided through the relocation of the septic system to be moved 75 meters away from the shoreline. The recommendation contained within the addendum further illustrate or talk about the construction mitigation measures, maintenance of 20 meters, trees within 20 meters of the shoreline, and further vegetating around the stairway and beach area. And these would continue to be implemented through site plan control should the minor variance be approved. Oh, this just kind of illustrates the sloping. The pictures when we did a site visit were in the winter time, so you could kind of see the existing topography of the site and how that would affect the siting. The application was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act and to the Otter Lake Association. The application would appear to conform with the intent of the official plan and to the provincial policy statement. Additionally, the application appears to satisfy the 4 tests of the minor variance, and therefore staff are recommending approval. Thank you so much, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'm going to call on the applicant or representative to make any comments.
The applicant or their representative are reminded to use the raise hand button or press *9 to indicate that they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I do see 1 hand raised. I'll now bring them into the meeting. A reminder to please have your microphone and video, if possible, turned on before you begin speaking and to confirm your name and mailing address.
Good morning, Chair Stone, committee. Lanny Dennis, Wayne Simpson and Associates, 3-76 King William Street, Huntsville, Ontario, P1H24. Represent the owners. Appreciate the efforts and assistance of staff bringing the application forward and meeting with us on site. I think that's a fair and accurate assessment of the proposal and certainly would concur with the planning department to approve the application as it meets the 4 tests for a minor variance. There was a previous variance granted, but upon removal of the existing dwelling when it was actually staked on site, it was not intended to be constructed where the previous variance permitted. We found that there was significant rock removal required, additional tree removal, and it also interfered with a drilled well. So through discussions with staff for this new location, the initial pre-con, if you will, the plan was revised to maintain the minimum 15-meter shoreline width by reducing the decks and rotating and twisting the building a little bit. I think the merits of the proposal, the dwelling is further back than the previous location. It avoids the rock removal. There's no further exceptions required. I believe it, if you're on site, quite nicely, if you will, fits the lay of the land. New septic system will be located a significant distance from the shoreline. The maximum lot coverage is 3% for the principal building, whereas 10% is permitted, and the maximum point 9% lot coverage for accessory structures, well under the maximum 5% permitted, albeit the utility of the property is at the shoreline. There was a revised ecological report, and as the planner had indicated, there's a low likelihood of any negative impacts to fish habitat. They've recommended some mitigation measures by retaining the existing tree cover within the first 20 meters of the shoreline, as well as planting, renaturalizing a couple of the locations on the property. And generally speaking, the lot is reasonably well vegetated already with existing mature tree cover. And that's, I would respectfully request committee approve the application. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. Any members of the public that wish to speak to this application?
Members of the public are reminded to use the raise hand button or press *9 to indicate that they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I see no hands raised.
Thank you very much. Committee members, any comments or questions? Mr. Donald.
Thank you, Chair Stone. Through you to Kelsey. In the previous adjustment approval A27 2021 HTE, there were 3 conditions regarding the private cabin, the removal of the privy, and the shoreline buffer. Are those conditions still in place? Is that still a requirement? Or does this new approval or request for approval supersede that? What's the position on the town's position with regards to those conditions?
Kelsey?
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mr. Chair. So I did visit the site earlier in the winter, or earlier this year, and they had moved the privy and they had moved the private cabin to a more appropriate spot. So those were addressed. And then in terms of the shoreline buffer and revegetation, they did do a site plan, the earlier site plan, that they had shown revegetation. And then in this condition, we said that also they would work within the recommendations of the EIS, which also talks about revegetation. So we thought those were appropriately addressed.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thanks. Any other comments or questions? All right, Mr. Dennis, if you can take your video down for me. Moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Helena Renwick. Be it resolved that minor variance application A16 2022 HTE be approved. The purpose and effect of which is to provide relief from subsections 5.3.46 of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2008 66P in order to decrease the front yard setback from 19.2 meters to 14.37 meters for the 282 square meter single detached dwelling. Decrease the front yard setback from 20 meters to 15 meters for the 15.6 square meter sunroom, and decrease the front yard setback from 17.5 meters to 15 meters for a 124 square meter attached deck. Conditional on all of the recommendations contained within the addendum to the fisheries assessment prepared by Mikuleski Nielsen Associates Limited, dated April 19, 2022, being implemented through site plan control. Comments or questions? All in favor? And that's carried. Kelsey, you're speaking to the 42 Scotts Point.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just prepare my screen. Great, I believe that's sharing. So thank you again. Through you, the subject property is located at 42 Scotts Point Road. The lot is designated shoreline, urban shoreline, and is zoned residential 1. The application has been submitted to permit the reconstruction of a non-complying 2-story boathouse and boatport and dock addition. A minor variance is required to increase the accessory lot coverage from 5% to 6.9% and increase the permitted cumulative width of the amenity area from 15 meters to 15.5 meters. The R1 zone limits accessory lot coverage to prevent overdevelopment, with 20% primary lot coverage and 5% accessory lot coverage permitted, with a combined 12.4% lot coverage. The proposal is in keeping with the intent of the zoning bylaw. Additionally, the maximum cumulative width is capped at 15% to minimize disturbance along the shoreline. And the 0.5 meter addition in cumulative width is considered a minor deviation. The existing shoreline buffer is also well vegetated, and no vegetation is proposed to be removed for the proposal. So you can see here, here's the boathouse. And then I thought these images demonstrated the existing shoreline buffer on the North Shore. Excuse me. The official plan states that the boathouses are not permitted between the railway bridge crossing the Muskoka River and the furthest easterly extent of the shoreline, urban shoreline residential designation of Fairy Lake. The existing boathouse and proposed reconstruction are outside of this area identified in the official plan. The official plan also identifies that boathouses will be limited to 1 story. However, the existing 2-story boathouse is legal non-compliant. Excuse me. The property is on a cold water lake with lake trout habitat, and type 1 and 2 fish habitat exists along the shoreline. Boathouses and boat ports are permitted shoreline structures. However, these structures are not permitted within type 1 fish habitat. A fish habitat assessment was completed by Riverstone Environmental Solutions on the Fairy Lake fishery and provided site conditions. Mapping identified the northern shoreline as containing type 1, and based on their observations and site conditions, the report's author characterized the shoreline abutting as type 2, based on the shoreline vegetation present. The author concluded that there's a low likelihood of negative impacts on the habitat or on the adjacent abutting on the subject property, provided the recommendations are implemented. Recommendations include implementation of construction mitigation measures to minimize any further disturbance, maintenance of the low impact pathways, and existing vegetations be retained in their natural state. And these will be implemented through site plan control should the minor variance be approved. The application was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act and to the Fairy Lake Association, who had no comments or concerns. The application would appear to conform with the intent of the official plan and be consistent with the provincial policy statement. Additionally, the minor variance appears to meet the 4 tests, and therefore staff are recommending approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks very much. I'll call on the applicant or their representative to make any comments.
The applicant or their representative are reminded to use the raise hand button or press *9 to indicate that they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I do see 1 hand raised. I'll now bring them into the meeting. A reminder to please have your microphone and video, if possible, turned on before you begin speaking, and to confirm your name and mailing address.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I agree with everything that Kelsey has said in her report. We have no objections. I'm just here to answer any questions. That's it.
Wonderful. Mr. Ross, could you just state your name and address?
Duncan Ross, 36 Chafee Street, Suite 201, Huntsville, Ontario, P1H 1J4.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. All right, then. I will go to members of the public that want to comment on this application.
Members of the public are reminded to use the raise hand button or press *9 to indicate that they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I see no hands raised.
Thank you very much. Members of committee, comments or questions? All right, seeing none, if Mr. Ross, you could take your video down for me. Moved by Helena Renwick, seconded by Brandon Stapleton. Be it resolved that minor variance application A19 2022 HTE be approved. The purpose and effect of which is to provide relief from subsection 3.1.6, 3.1.18.2 of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2008 66P in order to increase accessory lot coverage from 5% to 6.9%, and increase the permitted cumulative width of the amenity area from 15 meters to 15.5 meters. Conditional on all the recommendations contained within the fish habitat assessment prepared by Riverstone Environmental Solutions, Inc., dated September 2022, 2021, being implemented through site plan control. Comments or questions? All in favor? And that's carried. All right, moving right along. Kelsey, you're still up with North Muskoka River Road.
Yes, thank you. Just prepare my screen. Great. So thank you again. Through you, the subject property is located at 380 North Muskoka River Road. The lot is designated waterfront and is zoned Shoreline Residential 1. The application has been submitted to permit the construction of a single detached dwelling with an attached garage. A minor variance is required to increase the primary lot coverage from 10% to 14.96% and to permit a dwelling within 100 meters of extractive industrial pit and quarry zoning, which is M6 zoning, and that's just to the north of the property. The increased primary lot coverage is required because the subject property is an existing undersized lot. The property is also split zoned, both SR1 and NR zoning. So the NR is here and the SR1 is here. So the lot area is only calculated based on the SR1 zoning. And so that's how the primary lot coverage is calculated. So therefore that constrains the lot. Also, the dwelling is modestly sized and is not out of character for the surrounding neighborhood. A condition has also been proposed to reduce the accessory lot coverage to keep the lot coverage more in keeping with the intent of the zoning bylaw. Additionally, the provision to prohibit a dwelling within 100 meters of an M6 or M5 zone is used to mitigate adverse noise and vibration impacts to sensitive land uses like residential land uses. Permitting an additional residential within 100 meters of the abutting M6 zone is minor due to the separation distances of more than 300 meters and the significant existing waterfront residential surrounding the subject lands. The official plan speaks to limiting visual impacts from the shoreline, from the waterfront, noting disturbances on lots should be minimized. In this instance, the proposed dwelling is set back 30 meters from the shoreline, with existing vegetation screening the dwelling from the Muskoka River. And the proposed development also reflects the surrounding character. Natural constraints mapping identifies type 1 fish habitat and portions of hazardous forest types within the wildland fire risk, Appendix 1 of the official plan. The proposed dwelling is set back 30 meters from the Muskoka River, so this effectively mitigates the risk to type 1 fish habitat. The proposed dwelling is also within a clear area to provide suitable fire break between it and the surrounding hazardous forest types. Therefore, there's no concern with high wildland fire risk constraints. As mentioned, the subject property is also abutting an aggregate operation. The official plan states where new sensitive land uses are proposed within 300 meters of a pit operation or 500 meters of a quarry operation, a technical report should be prepared. Based on available aerial imagery and the aggregate license mapping, the current sand and gravel pit operations are more than 300 meters and more than 500 meters away. So we didn't feel the need to request this technical report. And this just highlights the location of the proposed dwelling. The application was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act and no objections were received, the application would appear to conform to the intent of the official plan and conform with the provincial policy statement. Additionally, the application appears to satisfy the 4 tests of a minor variance, and therefore staff are recommending approval. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'll call on the applicant or the representative to make any comments.
The applicant or their representative are reminded to use the raise hand button or press *9 to indicate that they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I do see 2 hands raised. I believe one is the applicant. I'll just bring them in right now.
Okay.
A reminder to please have your microphone and video, if possible, turned on before you begin speaking, and to confirm your name and mailing address.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, committee, for the time, and Kelsey for presenting our application. I just wanted to say that Kelsey presented everything exactly as described, and I'm just here to answer any questions. I'm the agent on the application. My name is Neil Vass. My address is 7 Florina Boulevard. And I guess just some additional comments as well. The main motivation was to essentially just lower the impact on the property by sort of consolidating the garage into the primary residence. And we will also be implementing a new septic system along with this plan.
Wonderful. All right. Apparently there's another hand that is coming in. Is that the applicant themselves?
Hi, Chair Stone. I believe it is a member of the public.
All right, then at this time, I will ask members of the public if they would like to speak to this application.
Members of the public are reminded to use the raise hand button or press *9 to indicate that they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I'll bring that individual in now. A reminder to please ensure that you have your microphone and video, if possible, turned on, and confirm your name and mailing address before beginning your comments.
This doesn't happen in live meetings.
Chair Stone, I have asked the individual to unmute and start their video. I'm not sure if they're receiving those requests or not. Oh, I think we're getting somewhere now.
Am I on now?
I can hear you. I can't see you.
Okay. Well, you won't like me anyway.
Okay. Well, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Regarding this application, it's less than a half an acre on which a single family dwelling is to be occupied. And this proposal is also that the lot is 100 meters from an existing licensed pit. The subject application is accessed via a private maintained road called North Muskoka River Road. And single lots are becoming scarcer and have increased substantially in price. I have no objection to the subject application being approved. But I have something I want to pass on to the members.
Okay.
And I would like you to kindly consider these facts. By the way, I tried last year, was unable to Zoom. I don't know whether it's a senior problem or a computer problem, but I couldn't get through.
Okay.
I made application to create 4 single family lots in size from 4 to 6 acres 2 of which were for my granddaughters. Now, all of these 4 to 6 acre lots basically are almost abutting this particular lot.
Excuse
And
me,
they were-
excuse me, we need to remain speaking about this particular application in front of us right now.
Okay,
If there's another issue, I would suggest you contact the planning department or Richard or Kelsey, and they will address your concerns and or bring them to committee.
well, the problem is they will not even consider this application. So who do I go to?
Chair Stone, if you don't mind, I will jump in.
Okay.
Good morning, Albert. If you'd like to speak to me after the meeting, we can discuss your specific applications.
All right.
Thank you.
And I will also add, if there's any other issues, please feel free to contact me. Kirsten will give you my contact information if you'd like to do that. All right. Thank you very much. All right, committee members, any comments or questions about this application before us? And I'm wondering, we did have a member of the public. Should I ask, is there any other members of the public that would like to speak to this application?
I see no hands raised additionally, Chair Stone.
All right, thank you very much. All right, no comments or questions by committee? All right, if Mr. Voss, if you could take your video down for me, please. Moved by Brandon Stapleton, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that minor variance application A 20-2022 HTE be approved. The purpose and effect of which is to provide relief from subsections 3.24.3 and 5.3.45 of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2008-66P in order to increase the primary lot coverage from 10% to 14.96% and permit a dwelling within 100 meters of land zone as extractive industrial pit and quarry M6 zone. Conditional on the original Shore Road allowance being stopped up, closed, and sold to the landowner, the maximum permitted accessory lot coverage being reduced from 5% to 0.68%, and the owner revegetating the shoreline buffer to the satisfaction of the town of Huntsville to be implemented through site plan control. Comments or questions? All in favor? And that's carried. All right. And Kelsey, our final application, no civic address, but it's Crandall and Muller.
Great, thank you so much. I guess I'll show you my screen maybe for the last time. So. Perfect. So I believe everyone can see that.
Yep.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Through you, the subject property is located on an unopened road allowance, which is located on concession 8 and 9 within the former township of Chafee on lot 29, concession 9. The lot is designated rural and is zoned rural 1. The application has been submitted to permit a woodland retreat and a detached garage. A minor variance is required to reduce the setback from a watercourse from 100 meters to 30 meters for a woodland retreat and detached garage. In appropriate locations, a private hunt camp or woodland retreat may be permitted on privately owned lands, excuse me, with specific standards established for such use in the zoning bylaw. Therefore, as the lot has no year-round maintained road frontage, a hunt camp is permitted under the official plan and zoning bylaw. Within the official plan, natural constraint mapping identifies steep slope areas and deer wintering habitat stratum 2 to address these natural constraints as well as the reduced setback to the watercourse. A scoped environmental impact study was prepared by Riverstone Environmental. Based on the field investigation, the report's author identified the top of bank of the slopes, unevaluated wetlands, 2 intermittent streams, habitat for 5 potential species at risk, and potential significant wildlife habitat. The author determined there was a low likelihood of adverse impacts provided the recommendations are implemented. The recommendations include minimizing the number of roads and driveways, avoiding vegetation removal outside of the development envelope, development being set back around 30 meters from the watercourse and wetlands, and construction mitigation measures to avoid disturbances around the watercourse. And you can see here is the watercourse in question. The recommendations will be implemented through site plan control should the minor variance be approved. Application was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act and no objections were received. The application would appear to conform with the intent of the official plan and be consistent with the PPS. Additionally, the application appears to satisfy the 4 tests of a minor variance, and therefore staff are recommending approval. Before concluding, I must also mention there were some minor errors in the report, including a reference to A22 instead of A21 in the recommendation. Apologies for any confusion that this caused. And therefore, if committee decides to move forward with an approval, this application would need an amendment to correct this error. Thank you so much, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thanks very much. Before we amend the motion to change it from 22 to 21, we will go to the applicant or the representative to make any comments.
The applicant or their representative are reminded to use the raise hand button or press *9 to indicate that they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I do see one hand raised. I will now bring them into the meeting.
Okay.
A reminder to please have your microphone and video, if possible, turned on before you begin speaking, and to confirm your name and mailing address.
Through the chair, thank you very much for your hospitality. I am Joseph Muller. My mailing address is 37 St. Mark's Road, Toronto, Ontario, M6S2H5. I don't have further information. I'm presuming that you can hear me.
We can.
Thank you. Always that question. I would. I'm essentially here in concurrence with Kelsey Shadlock's recommendations. Thank you very much. I appreciate her analysis and recommendations. I think there's one other correction that can be made in terms of the date of the scoped EIS study. I believe it's 2022, not 2021.
I'll ask Kelsey, is that correct?
Yes, apologies if it was 2021, it is 2022.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Muller.
And otherwise, I am concurring with the recommendations and grateful for those, and otherwise available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Wonderful. If you just hang with us, I'm going to go to the members of the public if they have any questions about this application.
Members of the public are reminded to use the raise hand button or press *9 to indicate that they would like to address committee. Chair Stone, I see no hands raised.
Thanks very much. Committee members, any comments or questions? Seeing none. All right. Mr. Muller, if you will take your video down, we're going to play some games with our motions here. So if I can ask Julie to bring up the red line version.
Sorry, my camera's the wrong direction here. Good morning, committee members.
Good morning.
Through you, Chair Stone, I will share the red line version. So we will just need a mover and seconder in order to move that amendment. So I'll show you, you'll be able to see both the original motion and the amended one. And then you would just have to proceed with moving the main motion as amended. So I will proceed with showing that in the screen in just a moment.
And if there's no objections, I'll use the same movers and seconders as the main motion. So This is the red line version that changes the two minor errors from A22 to A21. And January 18th, changing it from 2021 to 2022. So this is the amendment. So do I read the amendment or do I read the main motion?
I think either is fine, but we probably would just want to state the mover and seconder. So you can read through, I think, because you're going to be actually voting on the amendment. So if you want to read it, just what the changes are, we just have to vote the amendment. And then if you want to just proceed with reading the final one, I can put that back up for you, whatever is easier.
I'll read the motion, not as amended, the amendment with the corrections. So moved by Kenneth Donald, seconded by Brandon Stapleton. Be it resolved that minor variance application A21, 2022 HTE be approved. The purpose and effect of which is to provide relief from subsections 3.30.1B of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2008-66P in order to reduce the setback from a watercourse from 100 meters to 30 meters for a woodland retreat and detached garage. Conditional on recommendations contained within scoped environmental impact study prepared by Riverstone Environmental Solutions, Inc., dated January 18th, 2022, being implemented through site plan control. So all in favor of the amendment? That's carried. Now, I will also ask all in favor of the motion as amended. Oh, thank you. And that is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Now that all comments have been received, I declare these public meetings respecting the above applications to be concluded. And there is one piece of new business. So myself and some members of committee were curious about what a revegetation of the shoreline looks like. So I have asked that a motion be created to ask staff to bring back information of before and afters photos of some applications that we've dealt with. So in order to do this, because it wasn't on the agenda, we have to have a motion to suspend the rules in order to receive or to have this motion. So Julie, apparently you have a motion to suspend the rules. That is the motion that we're entertaining. Do we need one to suspend the rules? Oh, it is all contained within. Okay. Moved by Kenneth Donald, seconded by Helena Renwick. Be it resolved that committee suspend the rules of procedure relating to notice to allow a motion regarding shoreline revegetation and that the rules be reinstated at the end of the discussion. All in favor? And that's carried with more than 2/3. All right, so the motion to request staff to bring back a report. Wonderful. Moved by Kenneth Donald, seconded by Helena Renwick. Be it resolved that staff be directed to report back to committee with information to illustrate examples of shoreline revegetation works. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, committee. I actually just felt it was important. We keep asking for people to revegetate their shoreline, and I've never actually seen what it looks like after the fact. So I think this is important, and perhaps planning committee should see this as well. Anyways, to that we're at the end now. Moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Helena Renwick. We do now adjourn at 10:14 a.m. All in favor? And that's carried. That was faster than I thought it would be. Thank you, everyone.